Yeah, we're okay. We've just been through a rather large restructure exercise, and we've got 3 out of 9 properties open. Today, July the 7th, UAE is allowing visitors from everywhere to enter Dubai without quarantine, provided they've had a COVID test with up to 96 hours before travelling to Dubai or on arrival, which I think, the way things are going, I think really has to be the model going forward, because when we look at, a variety of jurisdictions, whether it's first world countries or third world countries, many places cases seem to be going up, and I don't think, well, I know the airline industry, I'm pretty sure the hotel industry can't afford to keep on going the way we're going. There's going to be a lot of hotels out of business. There's going to be a lot of people out of work. I think it's a good model going forward, and if it works here, hopefully, it's going to be taken up by other jurisdictions.
Have you heard about Australia today?
Yeah, closed down. Melbourne closed down. Victoria. Again.
It's again, and that's where I get a bit scared.
Yeah, me too.
Because for me, there's a couple of things that can happen, right? We can have this kind of raindrop economy, 3-4 days packed, 0% for a week or two, and then packed, 0%.
Yeah.
You have this constantly simmering at 30%, which again doesn't help anybody, just strains cash resources.
Yeah.
If we're lucky, we have this wave thing that constantly goes up, where you say, okay, now that I see demand, oh no, there's 100 more rooms coming into the market, so it gets absorbed again, and it goes to the next step. That's, I think, my preferred scenario.
Yeah.
But I think the more realistic one is the simmering and the peak, kind of like a Bart Simpson head.
Yes. I disagree with you.
Then we're really in mucky territories, because imagine you have a restaurant in Melbourne right now. You just opened up. You
closed down again.
Maybe hired 1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
Right? How's it with government then? Is that helping you at all? The governments, how supportive are they there in your neck of the woods?
Listen, from a big picture perspective, they're trying to get things open again, but relative to some other jurisdictions about subsidizing wages and so on and so forth, not really, actually not at all. Meaningful discounts on services that the government provide and taxes that we pay the government. Yeah, they've done it a little bit, but they want to get everything back operating again as soon as possible. So, in their mind, Emirates is flying again. I think it's 44 destinations, or maybe it's gone up to 50. They're letting tourists in from today. So in their mind, Dubai's open and let's move on.
But isn't that a dangerous game that you say we are reopened, but it's kind of like you reopen in the middle of winter and nobody's coming?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, listen, I think, everybody's talking up a good game and everybody's trying to be very positive about it. But the reality is, our core markets here are UK, Germany and Russia. Russia's still dealing with serious situation. UAE is not on their preferred list. So that means if somebody comes here from the UK via a tour operator or whatever, when they go back to the UK, they have to do 14 days quarantine until further notice. So that's not likely. And Germany, Germans are not allowed to come to the UAE, I think, until the end of August, if I'm not mistaken. So, that's our 3 key markets. So, everybody's trying to be positive and talking up a good game and happy that this, no quarantine thing, they've started it off. But realistically, I think people are saying it's going to be more like September or Q4.
When did you know you were in trouble? When did you say, oh boy, this is going to hit us? Because
we
different people.
We actually, from a senior management perspective, took a voluntary pay cut in the middle of March when we saw all of the cancellations starting to come in en masse, and it looked like it was going out of control in some countries, and it just got steadily worse from there. We were just trying to conserve cash and, I guess, give the sign to our teams and our shareholders that we were doing all that we could from a personal perspective as well.
Now, what does it mean then for the interim time, right? Because we're kind of in a transition period, I find. It's not really, we're not over it. We're kind of seeing through the worst, but you could have this camel hump.
Yeah.
How do you, or let me ask you this, how has your day changed now from a strategic perspective to a technical perspective over the last couple of weeks?
My day at the moment is really focused on cash flow, to be honest. And we've just, in the last, I guess, working towards it for the last 6 weeks, but in the last week, done a major restructuring exercise, really trying to put in place a cost structure that's going to allow us to be profitable at much lower levels of revenue. Because, when things do get going again, I think there's forces going against us. Some of them are particular to Dubai, in that, in preparation for Expo, which was supposed to happen from October, there's been a massive increase in supply. So there's that. And then I think from a demand perspective, I'm not really too sure exactly how demand comes back. Does it come back because there's bubbles, or does it come back because there's changes in the quarantine protocols, or does it come back because there's a vaccine? So that calls into question the whole confidence of travellers with the health environment as one point. And the other point is, there's been people that have been on unpaid leave, on salary sacrifice, or being let go. And we are, we run good quality hotels, but they're not super luxury. So I would say most of them are self-employed or working for companies, upper middle class people. In our core markets, I think a lot of those people have been impacted from a financial perspective. So, how readily are they going to jump on an airplane? How confident are they going to be to do it? How much cash are they going to have to do it? And then I think, the other point of the matter is how much encouragement is there going to be from the governments in the UK and European Union and so on to get people to holiday in their own countries. There's a number of things working against us, but we have also some unique selling points which are very beneficial for us as well.
It's interesting that you said we reduced our cost structure to be much, much lighter operating model, because when I had conversations with other executives, a lot of times it comes through that if I have a 350, 400 bedroom property, I have a certain break-even point. So it doesn't make sense for me to actually open. And we see that now everywhere across Asia, where the smaller you are, it seems to be working in your favor for the next 6 to 12 months just because of your cost base.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got we have 9 hotels under management. We've only got 3 open. Now, a couple more may open in 2020. Indian Ocean Resorts, I think Seychelles will open in August. Maldives will open in October. There are other hotels here in Dubai. We may get 1 or possibly 2 open this year. Our newest hotel, I don't think will open until 2021.
Wow.
Simply because, the cost of utilities is very high. We have reduced our manpower, and to reopen that hotel, you're quite right. It's a very good hotel, and it needs a certain base level of manning in order for it to stack up. And for that to stack up, you need a certain base level of occupancy. I think what we really don't know is how much pressure there's going to be on rates at the same time. You know, with all of these currents working against us, how is that going to impact the average rate? And I think the other thing about it is, you know, for Dubai, whilst people in our core feeder markets are under pressure, potentially under pressure financially, our competitor markets, I'm talking about Turkey, I'm talking about Egypt, I'm talking about North Africa, have much lower cost structures. And, you know, from that perspective may become more attractive. Now, what Dubai has going for it is, I think it's got great infrastructure. I think you can trust the health environment. The government has put in place great protocols to make sure that all the hotels are doing the right thing in terms of health and safety and hygiene. So you can trust, a bit like Singapore, you can trust that all that's going to be done really, really well. So that's our selling point. To the flip side, it's a higher cost destination.
Now, how do you think the future of travel then will look, right? Do you think, I mean, there is uncertainty, there's corporate, people say leisure is going to come back, but why do you think people will now travel in the next 6 to 12 months? Because everybody's talking about this essential travel, but haven't we realized one thing, that it's not really essential, it is more, it's not a commodity actually. It is something that is not essential, right?
Yeah. Listen, I think for meetings, company meetings, it's really not essential. You know, we have a new business that we're starting in China, and, you know, by and large, we're able to get most of the things we need done by Zoom or Teams or whatever form that we use. You know, we've hired people. We have a hotel under renovation. You know, we're talking to our joint venture partner. You know, everything's going along well. Essential travel is this, and I'm just putting it into my own context. We have to open a bank account in Hong Kong, and the bank in Hong Kong wants to see me see my face, and for me, see my passport. Yeah, so I've got to go there. We have, you know, in China, we have 3 or 4 or 5 projects which our joint venture partner has identified as projects which our joint venture management company should manage. I need to go there and check those projects. But the day-to-day operation and day-to-day operational meetings, you know, I'm far more comfortable that we don't need to jump on a plane and handle those things. So corporate travel, I think, is going to be impacted significantly. The good thing about my company is JA Resorts and Hotels is we're not targeted at business travelers. We are basically a leisure company. So that's good. And I think ICE is going to be severely impacted for some time.
Oh, you don't think those huge events, like one of the items that really threw me off is that ITB got cancelled on the Friday before ITB.
Yeah.
And that kind of, because I know a lot of people, especially first timers to ITB in Berlin, will arrive the weekend earlier to just see the city, right? And yeah. Texting me going like, well, now it's gone. And you kind of go, what do you do, right?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Are those big events per se?
I don't know in the fullness of time if they're passé. I'd like to think they come back. I mean, I think doing business with face-to-face, there is something about it, something powerful to eventually shake somebody's hand again and do a deal. But
yeah, maybe shaking hands will completely go off. It's like hanging the phone or rolling down the window, right?
Today I had a meeting with my boss, and I shook his hand. He walked in and put out his hand and shook my hand, and we made a joke about it, and then he pulled out his sanitizer.
It's interesting that you say that. We had a conversation the other week with the GM, and one of her long-standing guests came on the back and clapped her on the shoulder and said, "Another very well good," and she said she flinched.
Yeah, people don't. Yeah, it's true.
And it's just bizarre. And I sometimes find myself, like I was in a shopping center today and they have this typical thing, practice safe distancing so the virus doesn't spread into our community. And you can't help but go into those horror movies and say, like, what kind of world have we created?
Exactly.
About this virus that is lurking around the corner everywhere.
And the operative word is we. We did it. We.
Oh, we did, right? I think on the positive side, I think the world has now seen that travel is actually something that people want to do.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we have equally seen the other side to say, for a lot of the travel that we're doing, we actually don't need to travel.
Correct.
And I think there's a very fine balancing act. But what do you make out of statements such as hygiene is the new luxury?
Well, I don't believe that. I mean, I'll give you an example. Today, one of my colleagues sent me a clip on WhatsApp from an American television show, Inside Story or something, where they went into hotels and they did gotcha on a number of hotels where, and the idea was because of COVID, everything's supposed to be more hygienic. And the gotcha was, in these hotels, they didn't even change the sheets between guests. I think hygiene is a basic, it's something that actually has to be delivered, whether it's a 3-star, 4-star luxury hotel. There's no excuse. And luxury is about abundance. It's about something exceptional. And I don't think hygiene is that. Hygiene is a base.
Yeah, but it's interesting that you say that. Expedia released a business update, I think yesterday morning or this morning, depending on which time zone you're in. And their strongest performer was the rebranded homestay.
Okay.
Hygiene is really so high on your agenda. The last thing that I want to do is crash on somebody's couch.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? That's exactly like, and I think we as hotels, we need to take a step back and say, hang on 1 second, let's not get paranoid. We have always been clean, but yes, there is always something. If you find something, you will find something.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so when we now you said earlier, you talked about restructuring. Do you see the future of jobs being different? Do you see it more being specialists or more being all-rounders, or are we following an American model of kind of hire and fire? How we're going to deal, and we talked about Melbourne, right?
Well, I hope we're not going the American model, but I mean, I think, where we are, we don't have a lot of flexibility in the labour situation. We hire people, we house them, we feed them. We basically become a welfare state. And it would be nice to have more flexibility in our hiring. It would be nice that we're able to have, a base level team to handle a base level of volume. And then we have the flexibility to call in people to augment. And that's what they do. They have done for many years very well in Australia, talking about Melbourne, the casual employees, the hourly paid employees. It gives a lot of flexibility so that, you have people working when you need them and you reward them quite well. And then when you don't, they go on to another gig or they go on to something else. That would be quite helpful here. But the other thing, Fabian, we've done in terms of our restructuring is we've used this time to completely reimagine our IT environment. We've invested, we're in the process of investing in a new HR and payroll system, potentially new PMS, a new ERP system, a new back office system, and a forecasting and budgeting tool as well. We've traditionally had an environment that's probably, come out of the 80s, very moving around documents, Excel files, and so on and so forth. And what we're trying to create is an environment where there's one input and nobody else touches information in the middle, and then there's output from a management and a fiduciary reporting perspective. But we don't have to be, manually getting a lot of people involved in moving around documents. So with that, we've been quite heavy in our administration areas and finance and HR. And we're really trying to get into the modern age. And I think that's part of re-envisaging work, making processes simple and as I said, looking at one input, which then leads to an output, and all the other work in between is done by machines.
Have you seen a shift from to alternative revenues, or have you made any strides into alternative revenues? And what I mean by alternative revenues is selling your food online, or selling your food as takeaway, or some people turned meeting rooms into escape rooms. You had other people who built a drive-in cinema, used their car park for that. Have you gone on this kind of innovation course as well, or you kept it quite traditionally, playing to your strengths and playing not where you can't play?
Well, that's interesting. At our resort in 𝗃𝗏𝗧𝗧, while our hotels were almost fully closed, a lot of our revenue came from our other activities, our marina, our golf course, our horse riding, our shooting club, and so on and so forth. So that's not a lot of innovation. That's just we're lucky that we had those facilities. But, we also invested heavily last year in renovations and new hotels and new restaurants. And one of the restaurants that we opened was a franchise from Brooklyn, New York, called Motorino. And that's doing really, really well. Both the hotel that it sits in is closed, but that restaurant is open. And from a delivery perspective, it's doing really, really well. You're probably familiar with the delivery model, though. Those delivery companies are pretty chunky in terms of their commission. So we're trying to work our way around that.
Does that now lead you to rethink your closed hotels and say, actually now future-proof it, or even newly built? Are you looking for, no, don't give me that current design, because I know if we got I dare to say, if we get a black swan, how are we actually positioned for it?
Well, I think with our current hotels, as I said, we spent last year. We invested heavily in new hotel, new restaurants. I think we built 12 last year or something like that, and renovation of our legacy hotel. So, to be honest with you, we're not really in a position to go back and reconsider what we did. It's just unfortunate timing. But I guess, we're also looking at talking to various owners about third-party management opportunities. And yeah, we will be putting our head around, what is the ideal configuration in terms of number of rooms, types of rooms, family rooms, restaurants, how many, how can we, well, part of the thing we did last year was say to ourselves, we want to create restaurants that are enticing and exciting to the local community in which we live, not just reliant on hotel guests. So we would go further down that route, absolutely.
So how are you then preparing for the future from a revenue, sales, marketing perspective? Because there was a time when there was this one Ken who said, let's get rid of them and rehire them all, once we're going down the route. Other more sensible approaches were really around, let's try and see how we can manage through this time, how long that time will be. But you rightly said it at the beginning, cash flow is going to be king, and in some cases or not, you have to make a decision between bad and worse, right?
Yeah. We've outsourced. We're in the process of outsourcing reservations and revenue management to a company in Gurgaon, India. So the entire reservation operation for the company will be based in India, along with revenue management. And in terms of our marketing, communications, and sales teams, we have downsized our the mice part of the business, mice and corporate, because I just don't see that. I just don't see that investment. In the next at least 6 months, I don't see that producing anything. So we had our sales operation was broken down into our leisure operation, which is focused on tour operators and DMCs, and also then corporate and MICE, so 2 separate functions. Our corporate and MICE, we've downsized significantly. Our leisure operation, we're looking at our overseas offices, and when we're scaling them back a little bit, but our people here that we have on the ground, we're keeping because they have relationships, long formed relationships with the DMCs here in Dubai and the tour operators in Europe, and it's hard to replicate that. And that business will come back. We're thinking it's going to start to come back September or Q4, and we need those relationships intact.
I find it interesting that you're outsourcing at a company level, right? And we have a lot of discussions, so I'm getting a lot of requests from people asking me, is now a good time to start my own business, right? As far as revenue management concerned, as far as sales or marketing is concerned. And I say yes, because I honestly think that now is the time to at least experiment with those kind of things. And honestly, I applaud you for that.
Fabian, the thing about it is, we for our reservations operation, I can't remember exactly how many people we employ in Dubai, but Dubai is an expensive place to hire people. We have good people. I'm very happy with the people. They've done a good job, but it's expensive because you pay them, you feed them, you house them, and we've got a great deal with this company. This company has great references from significant, successful hotel businesses. So the risk is mitigated. They have a very, very professional and modern setup and approach to dealing with it. And obviously, the cost is significantly less. I think arguably they're going to expose us to some of the technology tools that they use. Arguably, we could possibly have a better result, but at least we'll have the same result in terms of our selling ability. But we're going to have it at a 40% cost reduction.
How important is revenue management now for you?
Pardon?
How important is revenue management now for you in the next 6 to 12 months? Because that's a big question to ask. Because you normally see revenue management as a strategic part. I know I'm very generalizing now, but equally a lot of times we're talking about, they're just tweaking the rates up and down, right? And when there's nothing to tweak, well, you could argue the point and say, why would I want, right? And it's interesting because I think people still see it as required, but I think in what form or in what sense, there's a bit of an unsureness in the industry.
Yeah, I think it's probably true, and it's a valid concern. I think there's something to be said for having very smart people focused on opportunity and competition. I'm going to talk at a high level from my perspective, but I think it's definitely something to look into further. But revenue people are strategic. Typically, they're very smart, and having a dedicated focus on looking at what the competitors are doing, looking at the pace of business, and what the relationship between the rates that you deploy and the pace. Even though it's a trickle, I think it's important. I mean, I'll give you an example. When we first opened our Palm Tree Court Hotel in Jebel Ali, before COVID, the average rate there in our high season was probably 900 dirhams of our currency. Now, when we reopened it and we went out to the market with a promotion on staycation here in the UAE, we deployed a hook rate of 396 dirhams, including 100% food and beverage credit back.
Wow.
Yeah. For various reasons, you know, it was designed as a hook. It was, you know, subject to availability, and you know, it was more or less in keeping what other people were doing. It wasn't completely out of the bounds of our competitive set, and we also took the view that, you know, there's a lot of people in Dubai who could be our target audience who are also hurting at the moment. So we took the view that that's what we decided to do. But, you know, as time has gone on, every week, every weekend, it's getting better and better. The average rate we're actually achieving now, net, is about 700 dirhams. And that doesn't happen by itself. You know, there is demand there. You know, it's single segment demand. So, you know, there is somebody focused on it, and there is somebody making decisions about what we're deploying and when we're deploying it. So I think it's necessary, you know. But I do take your point. It is a cost, and we do need to look into it.
How do you think about the travel bubbles now? Is that going to be the future of hospitality? You briefly mentioned it in the beginning, but is that something that we need to live and breathe by, to say, okay, now Australia, now Germany, now UK, right? And try and move our eggs out of that one basket.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm no expert on the health situation, but I mean, I'd like to think, Fabian, that the Dubai model can be a model that perhaps other countries choose to look at, and that is, you know, anybody can come here, provided you have a COVID test, not more than 96 hours before you get on the plane. And if you don't have that, you have a COVID test here in Dubai when you land, and you have to go into quarantine for 28, 24 or 36 hours until the results of the test are known. And if the results are negative, you carry on with your holiday. I mean, the travel bubble, to me, I mean, they've been talking about potential of having a travel bubble between Australia and New Zealand since May. And now I believe it's going to be September, and maybe then not even all states in Australia. New Zealanders don't want us. So, you know, with the travel bubble...
You had to push that in, yeah?
Exactly. With the travel bubble thing, I think it's kind of a bit hot and cold, whereas if there's a protocol in place and the testing regime is watertight, maybe that can be a more viable model that's going to see travel open up.
Isn't there also, like, I think Singapore, Dubai, Bali, for example, they're all in a very similar boat that says you need international travel.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Your domestic travel will run out of steam like this. Right?
Absolutely.
So I think it's great that Dubai is taking that step and say, because there are serious risks associated with that. Right?
True.
But
they're trying to mitigate the risk, but no, the risk is there.
The other interesting thing was, I read the other week, and I don't know how true it is, that the Maldives kind of opened, but then flights from the UAE essentially said, you can only go for essential travel, right? And all of a sudden they pulled all the flights and all hotels were kind of empty again.
Yeah, I didn't hear that. I know that they're proposing to open on the 15th of July. I think resorts open from 1st of August. We're doing some renovation work, so we won't open till 1st of October. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me that that's the case. I know they've had a spike the last couple of days.
How do you then see the future of hospitality? I mean, it's
all I can say is,
how are we going to see it for the next 12 months, and how are you going to see it if we meet again in 5 years' time? Are we going to say this was the best thing that could have ever happened to us as an industry? Or are we still sitting there and go, that was the day Terminator came?
No, listen, I think you have to look at the glass half full. That's why, you know, I think you have to look at it as an opportunity to create cost structures that are viable. You have to look at it as an opportunity to provide a value proposition to our customers, which satisfies them and we can afford. And that's why, you know, we've restructured our senior headcount, our mid-level headcount, our junior headcount, investing in technology. And the fact is, without COVID, we probably wouldn't have done these things. So, you know, is it the best thing that could have happened? Is it the best way that this could have been achieved? No, it's been quite painful. But is it going to be beneficial in the long term? For the long-term future of our business? I believe so. How do I see the next 12 months? I think it's going to be a shallow trajectory of return for the reasons that I outlined at the start. The confidence, well, first of all, the health situation, the confidence, and then the economic situation. It's going to be a shallow return. I mean, the good thing is at the end of next year here, we have the Expo again. Expo 2020 will be in 2021. So, you know, potentially that's a good thing for the UAE and Dubai.
Now, what did you learn about yourself then? Last question. As an executive leading a company, I know you have been in multiple exec positions. This one most probably would have hit hard on an emotional as well as a business level. Was there anything that you changed yourself, or was there anything that you realized about yourself that your priority changed?
Well, is there not some kind of estimate we can make?
No, I just think that you have to, I guess, before you come to work every day, understand that people are relying on you to give them the signal about what kind of view to take about the current and the future. What's done is done. And I think, you know, you have the opportunity as a senior executive to write the narrative of how you're going to react to what's done and how the future is going to pan out. And no matter how the future pans out, what kind of view, you know, you take about the future. You know, you can't, certain things are beyond your control, but you do have control over how you react, right? I think that's probably the most important thing.
Cool.